everyone. I am presenting a newer advances in retinoblastoma treatment. So, if we see the world retinoblastoma map, where do we stand? So, we can see India. It's
There is
actually a middle income
there is echo in this. Can others also hear echo?
प्रफुल्ल सर प्लीज वॉइस होल्ड कर लेते हैं.
Praful has to be muted. It's coming from yes. Okay, now start, please.
So here we can see India. It's a middle income country, and here every year we see around 1500 to 2000 cases of retinoblastoma every year. So if we see the timeline, till 1990s we had treatment modalities such as enucleation and EBRTs. But after 1990s to 2001, there was a revolution in the field of retinoblastoma by introduction of intravenous chemotherapy, and 2010 onwards, intra-arterial chemotherapy, intravitreal chemotherapy, and periocular chemotherapy were introduced. So if we see today, more than 98% of survival rate is there in the field of retinoblastoma. Now, what's new in 2020? So a couple of days back, in November issue of IJO, we saw this. We came across this review, which is a review article and has reviewed the modern treatment of retinoblastoma. So, in pre-treatment protocol, before starting any treatment of retinoblastoma, first you need to know what is the group of retinoblastoma. You have to classify the group into A, B, C, D, and E. So, A is basically a small tumor. Any tumor which is less than or equal to 3 millimeters in basal diameter or thickness is group A. Group B is basically bigger tumor or besides the macula or optic nerve. So, these tumors which are more than 3 mm in basal diameter or thickness, or tumor location less than 3 millimeters from the fovea or less than 1.5 millimeters from the optic disc, or tumor which are associated with subretinal fluid which are less than or equal to 3 millimeters from the tumor margin. Now coming to C, D and E. C is for contiguous seeds, D is for diffuse seeds, E is for extensive tumor, as simple as that. So contiguous seeds, basically we take any retinoblastoma with subretinal seeds less than or equal to 3 millimeters from tumor vitreous seeds less than or equal to 3 millimeters, or both subretinal or vitreous less than 3 millimeters from the tumor. Diffuse, it will be just opposite. Anything more than 3 millimeters from tumor, vitreous seeds, or whether it's a subretinal seeds, will become group T. And group E in extensive tumors, any retinoblastoma which is occupying more than 50% of the globe, or it is associated with neovascular glaucoma, or any vitreous hemorrhage, anterior chamber invasion, or any post-laminar optic nerve involvement or choroidal involvement more than 2 millimeters, any scleral involvement, orbit or anterior chamber involvement will be labeled as group E tumors. So here you can see this is a small tumor which is located in the periphery and is less than 3 millimeters. So this we label as group A. This is a large tumor, big tumor which is located in the macula more than 3 millimeters is group B. Here you can see the tumor associated with subretinal seeds is group C, and here associated with subretinal seeds with vitreous seeds is group D, and group E is a large tumor which involves more than 50% of the globe. Now in the same article, the treatment algorithm was given based on the laterality and the ICRB staging. ICRB is International Classification of Retinoblastoma Stage. So if any patient comes, first you have to examine the child under anesthesia and you have to advise MRI. Now which MRI to advise? You have to advise contrast enhanced MRI, which is axial, coronal and sagittal section. 2 mm cut should be taken, which should pass through optic nerve and pineal gland. So once you diagnose the child with retinoblastoma, you have to categorize whether it's a unilateral or bilateral. So in bilateral, germline mutation will be there. And unilateral cases you have to classify into whether it's group A, B, C and D. A, small tumors you can manage with focal therapy such as cryotherapy or transpupillary thermotherapy. B, you have to see whether it's involving macula or not. If it's macula sparing, then you can treat with cryo and TTT. If it's involving macula, then you can treat with intra-arterial chemotherapy, 3 or 4 cycles. If it's C, D and E, then you can go for intra-arterial chemotherapy, or even if you can give intravenous chemotherapy. Now coming to tumors which are group E tumors, they have, if high risk features are there and choroidal and optic nerve invasion is there, you have to go for enucleation plus minus high dose intravenous chemotherapy of 6 to 9 cycles you can give. But if a tumor is bilateral, then first line is you have to start on standard dose of 6 cycles of intravenous chemotherapy. Then every 4 weeks you have to assess the child by doing examination under anesthesia, and ideally you should advise orbital MRI every 6 months until the child is 5 years of age. So on follow-up, if improvement or stability is there, then you observe the child and then continue the same treatment, and as on required, you can give the focal therapy. But if the treatment is failed, then what will you do? You have to escalate to glow salvage treatment. So those cases, you have to see whether the tumor is a recurrent tumor, or any recalcitrant seeds are present, or multiple vitreous seeds are present, or any intracameral seeding is present. So if any recalcitrant seeds are there, you have to go for intra-arterial chemotherapy, or even you can go for plaque brachytherapy. If multiple vitreous seeds are there, you can go for intravitreal chemotherapy. And localized group of vitreous seeds, you can go for precision intravitreal chemotherapy, which I'll be speaking later on. And intracameral seeds, you can give intracameral chemotherapy. Now, focal therapy includes laser photocoagulation and laser chemotherapy. It also includes cryotherapy and brachytherapy. It's primarily treated for smaller tumors, and it's also treated as an adjunct after chemo reduction for larger tumors. So in laser therapy, you can see less than or equal to 3 millimeter tumors are usually treated, and here TTT is being given in this picture. You can see. So TTT basically, it spares the blood vessels from occlusion and produces a compact scar. So in laser photocoagulation, what we do, we give laser around the tumor to occlude the blood vessels so that the tumor dies due to loss of blood supply. But in TTT, it's basically causes, it gives infrared radiation. So we directly give the radiation over the tumor. So it causes intratumoral thermolysis, and finally it can lead to a flat atrophic scar. Disadvantage is that it can lead to focal iris atrophy if not given properly. Then lens opacity can also occur. Large area of retinal scarring is there. Sometimes in rare cases, retinal traction and serous RD can be seen. This is a new technology. Here ICG guided TTT has been given. So what is being done, that ICG can be used to enhance the effects of TTT in cases of suboptimal response, tumor recurrence, or lightly pigmented fundus. So we generally we tend to miss very small lesions with the pigment, like when the fundus is like lightly pigmented. So in those cases, you can visualize properly by doing ICG. So ICG dye can be infused at a dose of 0.3 to 0.5 mg per kg 1 minute prior to the TTT application. This is transcranial cryotherapy. So this is usually used in tumors which are less than or equal to 3 millimeter in basal diameter and less than 2 millimeter in apical diameter. And it should be located anterior to the equator. No evidence of any diffuse seeding should be there. It can also be given after chemotherapy and for focal tumor recurrence. So this is the procedure. You have to do indirect ophthalmoscopy, and the cryo probe should be centered directly under the tumor when you are doing the freezing, and the ice ball formation should be seen on freezing, and it should adequately cover the tumor up to 1 to 2 mm to include any if any local seeds is there. So here usually we do triple freeze thaw cycles of cryotherapy, and not more than 2 to 3 sites are included because risk of RRD is already there, and these can be repeated after 4 to 6 weeks. So here in this diagram you can see this is a tumor, and after application of cryotherapy the tumor has regressed. Now what's new in diagnostics? So we have something called as handheld spectral domain OCT. So this OCT was introduced for identification of sub-millimeter clinically invisible retinoblastoma, the tumors which are less than 1 millimeters. And it can also document tumor recurrence and monitor tumor response to various therapies. This can be done in OPD based procedure also, and this can be combined with ICG TTT also. For this procedure, general anesthesia is not required. So this is a small video. Here you can see the child is comfortably seated in mother's lap in OPD procedure, and handheld OCT is being done. So you just have to dilate the child, and here you can visualize the retina, and you can assess all the retinal layers, and even if any small tumor is there, it can be detected. So this is an article which was published. It tells about OCT of small retinal blastoma. So in this study, what they have done a retrospective analysis. They have taken 20 lesions, and all the lesions were less than 1 millimeter of thickness, and some interesting signs they have found. So in around 95% of lesions, they have found a fishtail sign which was present at the level of internal nuclear layer, And in around 75% of cases, they have found shark fin sign which was present at the level of outer nuclear layer. And they also came across intratumoral microcalcification. So this handheld OCT has permitted precise tumor monitoring for growth, relationship with the fovea, for prediction of visual potential, response to therapy, and even detection of subclinical or invisible retinoblastomas. So here you can see this tumor is like clinically invisible, but once you do the handheld OCT, you can see this lesion. So these two signs are shown here. Here at the level of internal nuclear layer, there is splaying of the layer. So this is has been labeled as fishtail sign. And here at the level of outer nuclear layer, this is the shark fin sign. So here you can see this is the outer plexiform layer. So there is a kink in the outer plexiform layer, and this is the wave-shaped displacement of the hyporeflective outer nuclear layer. So this is called as shark fin sign. Here in these pictures, you can see the tumor is not clinically visible, but once you do the OCT, you can see a subtle retinoblastoma here. Same here also. Fishtail sign has been shown in these two diagrams. And in these two diagrams, intratumoral microcalcification, the hyperreflective microcalcifications can be seen. And same here also, you can see the shark fin sign. This is the kink and this is the wave displacement. Now this was a study which was tells about handheld OCT in monitoring of submillimeter retinoblastoma, which was treated with ICG DDT. So here also you can see the tumor is not clinically visible, but once you do the OCT, you can see the tumors. And all those signs are present here, and after DDT was done, you can see the tumor has regressed and it has formed a flat atrophic scar. Similar study, here also you can see the tumor is like clinically invisible, but once you do the TTT, the tumor has regressed. Now in our center, we are doing RED-CAM very frequently, so you can do fluorescent angiography also along with this RED-CAM, which helps in visualization of capillary dropouts, neovascularization recurrences, and occlusive vasculopathy following intra-arterial chemotherapy. Coming to chemotherapy, you can classify into systemic and local. So systemic we are giving intravenously, and locally it can be given on intra-arterial, intravitreal, and periocular chemotherapy. So intravitreous is a triple drug regimen. Everyone knows this is a VEC regimen. We give on day 1 vincristine, etoposide, and carboplatin. On day 2 we give etoposide. But the only disadvantage is that it has systemic side effects such as myelosuppression, which occurs in almost 100% of patients, and they require blood product transfusion after the treatment. So we have two regimens, standard dose chemotherapy and high dose chemotherapy. So standard dose chemotherapy is given in intraocular group A to E. High dose is given in extraocular RB cases. So standard dose, the doses are different for different age groups. So less than 3 years, these doses you can remember, and for more than 3 years, vincristine 1.5 mg per meter square, and etoposide 150 mg per meter square, and carboplatin is 560 mg per meter square. This dose you can remember. Now coming to intra-arterial chemotherapy. So what are the indications? So it can be given in neonatal retinoblastoma, mostly group C and D, and recurrent RB following previous intravenous chemotherapy or plaque radiotherapy, recurrent extensive subretinal seeds not controlled by intravenous chemotherapy. So here also 1 drug regimen, 2 drug regimen, and 3 drug regimen we can give. And most common drug we are giving is melphalan. So here you can see this is a group C retinoblastoma with subretinal fluid is there. And after doing intra-arterial chemotherapy, the lesion has regressed nicely. So for various age group, various dosing has been given. So you can remember this. Now intra-arterial chemotherapy is given by it's basically a supraselective intra-arterial ophthalmic artery chemotherapy. So there are definitely side effects of this procedure. It's usually a neuroendovascular surgery, so it requires an assistance of an intervention radiologist and a neurologist. And it can, if it causes stimulation to the carotid sinus, then transient autonomic events can occur such as bradycardia and hypotension. And ophthalmic artery vasospasm can also be seen in some cases. Other side effects are like choroidal occlusive vasculopathy and retinal artery emboli. Vitreous hemorrhage and BRAO and cranial palsy can also be seen. So here is a small video which shows how do we administer intra-arterial chemotherapy. It is audio also, so please watch this carefully.
Prior to the procedure, a nasal decongestant, oxymetazoline, is administered to reduce the blood supply to the nasal passages. After the induction of general anesthesia, femoral artery access is obtained, and intravenous heparin is administered. Utilizing fluoroscopic guidance, a 4 French guide catheter is advanced into the internal carotid artery at the level of C2. Under roadmap guidance, a microcatheter is advanced over a microwire beyond the ophthalmic artery origin. Selective catheterization of the ophthalmic artery is then performed by slowly retracting the microcatheter until the tip engages the origin. Superselective angiography is then performed to confirm the position of the microcatheter and assess the hemodynamic flow patterns of the ophthalmic artery. The chemotherapeutic agent, melphalan, is then infused through the ophthalmic artery over a 30-minute period. The microcatheter position is assessed during the infusion by intermittent fluoroscopy. Enhanced chemotherapeutic delivery to the tumor is achieved not only by superselective ophthalmic artery infusion, but also from the vasoconstrictive effects induced in the nasal mucosa from the prior oxymetazoline administration. After the chemotherapy has been delivered, the catheters are withdrawn and the femoral sheath is removed. After an average of 3 cycles, the retinoblastoma is expected to significantly decrease in size and regress completely, or be sufficiently small enough so that local therapies are effective. A successful treatment avoids enucleation and the debilitating toxicities associated with systemic chemotherapy.
Okay, I hope the video was clear. Now coming to intravitreal chemotherapy, before seeing the intravitreal chemotherapy, we should know what are the types of vitreous seeds. So we can classify into classic vitreous seeds: prehyaloid, subhyaloid, epiretinal, intraretinal, and intracameral, which could be depository or infiltrative. So this is the simplest classification: type 1, 2, and 3. Type 1 are dust seeds. Type 2 you can classify into sphere, which could be smaller and larger. Type 3 is cloud seeds. So sphere smaller will be like translucent throughout, and larger will be outer translucent rim will be there with white centers. So this is a dust type of vitreous seed. Here you can see this is a sphere and this is a cloud, and here you can see everything. This is a cloud with dust with sphere with a string of pearl appearance. Coming to intravitreal melphalan, what is the preparation? It comes in 2 vials will be there. One vial is the drug itself, which contains 50 mg of melphalan, and another will be 10 ml of solvent. So you have to mix the solvent in this vial to make it a solution, and 1 ml of the solution is then diluted with 24 ml of NS to make it a solution of 25 ml, and from this you take 0.1 ml of the solution to inject intravitreally, which contains around 20 microns of melphalan. Similarly, topotecan, it comes in a liquid form. Only 1 vial is there, which contains 2.5 and 4 mg vials, which contains 1 mg per ml. So if you take 1 mg of the solution, you dilute with 4 ml of NS to form a 5 ml of solution, and from this, if you take 0.1 ml, it gives you 20 microgram of topotecan in 0.1 ml. This is a video showing intravitreal chemotherapy. So prior to giving intravitreal, you have to first give a thorough wash with betadine solution, and then you clean the area nicely. Here you can see the vitreous seeds through the pupillary area. After the cleaning, you have to do paracentesis with a 32 gauge needle to decompress the globe, and then you have to mark the area. So in pediatric age group, usually you are taking 3 mm from the limbus. So you inject into the vitreous cavity. You have to keep on swinging to the pupillary eye so that you don't injure the lens. And after you inject, you can see the yellowish hue. This is because of melphalan. And after removing the needle, you have to freeze it with cryotherapy probe, just to prevent any inadvertent vitreous cells to come extraocularly. So triple freeze cryotherapy is being given. And after chemotherapy, you have to nicely jiggle the eyeball to make the drug more dispersive inside the eyeball, and then you have to again clean the eye and patch. Now, what is precision intravitreal chemotherapy? So this is what has been come up now. Chemotherapeutic drug is it's injected in close proximity to a single or localized group of vitreous seeds under indirect ophthalmoscopy. So in precision intravitreal chemotherapy, the eye is not jiggled. following the injection in order to avoid any unwanted dispersion of the injected drugs. And the eye is kept still and head is positioned with the vitreous seeds located inferiorly, using gravity as an aid to minimize exposure to the macula and other unwanted sites. This modality is thought to be very functional, and it has caused a reduction of mean injections from 4 to 5 to 2.6 injections. Now, in this case, this was a case of diffuse anterior segment retinoblastoma. So what happens in a diffuse anterior segment retinoblastoma? Only the seeds will be there in anterior segment, otherwise the posterior segment will be completely normal. So in these cases, you can just give intracameral chemotherapy and the lesion regresses. Coming to periocular chemotherapy, indication is in advanced group D or E with diffuse vitreous seeds in which a higher local dose of chemotherapy is desired. You can give periocular. So here we are using carboplatin and topotecan in the doses of 1.5 to 2 mg and topotecan in 1 mg. So this is a video which is showing the administration of periocular chemotherapy. So it's before giving periocular chemotherapy, you have to do indirect ophthalmoscopy and you have to find out in which quadrant the lesion is there. So you go in that quadrant and you have to give the chemotherapeutic agent in subtenon space. And after injecting the drug, you have to nicely massage in that area so the drug will disperse nicely within the subtenon space. And then after giving a proper ocular massage, the eye is patched. So this was a case. Here periocular topotecan was given and you can see the tumor has regressed very nicely. Advantage is that it achieves rapid level within the vitreous in 30 minutes and lasts for hours, and the dosage is around 6 to 10 times higher that can be achieved by intravenous chemotherapy, and it avoids risk of intravitreal injection. But the problem is that it can lead to orbital and eyelid edema and ecchymosis, and orbital fat atrophy can also be there, which can and fibrosis, which can lead to strabismus. So this was a patient for which periocular chemotherapy was given and she had orbital edema. Coming to intrathecal chemotherapy with stem cell replacement, this is a newer concept. So this was a case report in which a 4-year-old child was there and he was diagnosed with retinoblastoma with CNS metastasis. So in this patient, high dose intra-arterial regimen was given along with intrathecal chemotherapy. And after in administration of these drugs, the tumor has responded very nicely. Stem cell replacement is a new concept which is under experiment. Coming to radiotherapy, we have two modalities, external beam radiotherapy and episcleral plaque brachytherapy. In EBRT, the indications are when where primary chemotherapy or local therapy has failed, or where chemotherapy is contraindicated. Those cases we can give. And it's also used as a multimodal management in orbital retinoblastoma, in recurrent tumors, and with the child and the parents are not willing for enucleation. Those cases also we can give. Advantage is that it prevents orbital recurrence and long-term tumor control is there, but the disadvantage is that it can lead to orbital hypoplasia, and risk of secondary cancer is also more, along with cataract and keratoconjunctivitis sicca. So newer techniques in radiation therapy is that there is something called stereotactic radiation therapy, intensity modulation radiotherapy, and proton therapy. So these are these are the radiotherapy which gives accurate radiation to only tumor cells, and this does not affect the surrounding structures. So here a dose of 40 to 45 gray is delivered to the target volume by 2 electron beams over 5 weeks with a fraction of around 1.8 gray for children less than 1 year, and up to 2 gray for children more than 1 year. And this is the linear accelerator which gives these radiotherapies. Coming to episcleral plaque brachytherapy, what are the indications? This can be given into solitary tumors located anterior to the equator up to ora serrata, and primary unilateral retinoblastoma of size less than 16 mm in basal diameter and less than 8 mm in thickness. Recurrent or residual tumors after primary chemotherapy or failed EBRTs can also be done, and tumors which are more than 3 mm thickness, which is not suitable for treatment by other focal therapy, we can go for episcleral plaque brachytherapy. So we have a few isotopes. Here we are using ruthenium 106, we have iodine 125 and cobalt 60 also. So iodine, basically the depth of penetration is up to 10 mm, and ruthenium is up to 6 mm, and ruthenium emits beta rays. So advantage is that the direct treatment of the tumor with minimal scarring is there, and deeper penetration as compared to other forms of focal treatment. Single treatment is usually required for these cases, and surrounding healthy tissue is not affected in these cases. But the disadvantage is that it's not effective for large tumors and it's not ideal for multifocal recurrences, and cataract, glaucoma and radiation retinopathy risk is always there. So this is a video which is showing episcleral plaque brachytherapy. So here you can see before giving the plaque brachytherapy, we do a localized peritomy and we bridle the recti muscle. So after putting the bridle sutures, we have to disinsert the recti muscle from its insertion site, and after doing the insertion, we have to further dissect, and we'll sever the oblique muscles also. And before we insert a dummy plaque. This is a dummy plaque. After inserting, we mark both the holes so that we know exactly where we have to put the actual plaque, and we'll suture along with the sclera. So this was a tumor. So here we can see the suture is being passed. This is 5-0 ethibond suture. It's passed through the sclera, and this is the actual ruthenium plaque. So once we put the plaque, we have to take out the suture from these two holes, and we have to suture it to the sclera. And now the recti muscle which we have inserted, we won't reinsert now. We'll just put an adjustable suture, because after few days, once we are removing the plaque, then we can reinsert the recti muscles. So we'll just put an adjustable suture, and then we'll close the conjunctiva, and we'll give a subconjunctival injection, and we'll patch the eye. So this was a lesion which was pre-brachytherapy, and after giving post-brachytherapy, after 1 month, we can see the tumor is almost resolved. Enucleation has always been the primary modality in group E retinoblastomas, with NVI, secondary glaucomas, and anterior chamber tumor invasion, or tumor occupying more than 75% of vitreous volume. If the tumor is necrotic with secondary orbital inflammation, we opt for the enucleation. Tumors with hyphema or vitreous hemorrhage, we can go for enucleation. So before doing enucleation, you have to take proper consent from the patient. You have to explain the nature of the disease. You have to explain the procedure, what are the long-term outcomes. So all those things should be kept in mind. Now this is something new, which is gene therapy, VCN01. So various studies are being done on this genetic research in case of retinoblastoma. But before understanding the gene therapy, I would like to tell you what are the basic kind of genes that are involved in carcinogenesis. Those two genes are there, oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes. So oncogenes are those genes which drive cellular progression to cancer, whereas tumor suppressor gene are those genes whose product work to prevent the development of cancer. So if you have too much of oncogene or not enough of tumor suppressor gene, then they can result to familial cancer syndromes. So Alfred Knudsen has given a two-hit hypothesis, which predicted the existence of tumor suppressor gene that suppresses cancer cell growth, and he reasoned that for retinoblastoma to occur, both alleles of the same retinoblastoma relevant gene must be inactivated. So this is a slide which is taken from Robbins. So here you can see you have two forms, familial form and sporadic form. So in familial form, you can see this is a normal RB gene, this is a mutant, and here also both are normal. So from here, germ cell has got a mutant, and here it's a normal cell. So the zygote will also have a mutant gene. So what happens? These gene will be transmitted on the child somatic cells. So all the cells have this mutant gene, and when this transfers to retinal cells, all the mutant cells will be there in retinal cells. So for the retinoblastoma to occur, the second mutation has to occur. So once the second mutation occurs, it leads to a deformed gene, and ultimately retinoblastoma occurs. But what happens in sporadic forms? Sporadic forms, the parents will be having normal genes. No mutant gene will be there. The same will be transmitted till the child somatic cells. But once the cell comes into child's retinal cells, what happens? First mutation occurs and it becomes a mutant gene. And ultimately, if second mutation occurs, then both the genes will be affected, and ultimately the child will get retinoblastoma. So in sporadic forms, we usually see unilateral retinoblastomas. Familial forms, it usually presents with bilateral retinoblastomas. So you have to remember the locus of the gene. It's present on the 13th chromosome, long arm of 14 band. Now coming to RB in the cell cycle, how does the cancer develops? So basically all cells, even cancer cells, divide by an orderly progression through the cell cycle. So what happens? RB1 is basically a tumor suppressor gene which produces protein, RB protein, which controls whether the cell will proceed into a proliferative stage. So this RB functions at the G1S checkpoint. Here it works. So basically RB what does, it prevents the proliferation by binding to an inactivating epithelial growth factor E2F transcription factor. So here you can see this protein is bind to the epithelial growth factor. So if this thing is there, then the cell cycle won't be happening. The tumor cells won't grow. But the moment it gets activated by cyclin kinases, CDKs, the phosphorylation of this RB protein occurs and this epithelial growth factors is released. So once this epithelial growth factor is free, it activates gene that drives cell cycle progression and ultimately cancer develops. So this is a simple diagram. So what is VCN01? So VCN01 is a genetically modified oncolytic adenovirus type 5. It targets the events which are associated with RB1 dysfunction and increased E2F expression, which represents a potential treatment in retinoblastoma. So in this diagram, what you can see, this is the E2F factor which is bind to RB protein, and on CDK activation, this is a phosphorylation, and E2F, it does the transcription, mRNA is produced, so ultimately it forms a protein and cell cycle occurs. But VCN01, what it does, it goes into the tumor cells and it genetically modifies the cells in such a way that it keeps on binding with the E2F. So it increases the over expression of E2F. So it basically inhibits the phosphorylation of this protein. So this cycle is basically altered. The RB1 E2F pathway is basically altered by this VCN01 virus. That's why it's called oncolytic virus. So various research is being going on therapeutic targeting of RB1 pathway in retinoblastoma with the oncolytic adenovirus VCN01. It's basically designed to replicate selectively in tumor cells with high abundance of free E2F1, a consequence of a dysfunctional RB1 pathway. So various studies are being done in mice models and juvenile rabbits, and it has been found that it's quite effective and there is a tumor regression in these models. So it might provide a tumor selective and chemotherapy independent treatment option for retinoblastoma. So this is basically it's in phase 1 trial. So basically they are studying the safety and activity of this virus in patients with refractory retinoblastoma. They have recruited around 13 patients and they started the study in 2017 and expected to complete in 2021 April. So coming to hereditary RB management, early diagnosis and treatment of tumor is required. 6-monthly brain MRI is required till 5 years of age. You have to avoid carcinogens and ionizing radiation such as CT should be avoided, UV radiation should be avoided, and detailed and regular mole surveillance should be done. Most importantly, genetic testing and prenatal diagnosis is very, very important. So they have few articles which have published about the in vitro detection of retinoblastoma with fetal MRI and ultrasound. So in this article, they found that prenatal ultrasound was more sensitive than fetal MRI in detection of elevated retinoblastoma lesions. So here are a few articles which have given information regarding prenatal ultrasound detection and management of hereditary retinoblastoma. This is an article which was published in latest November, this November issue. They have diagnosed they have done in vitro ultrasonography detection of fetal retinoblastoma and neonatal selective ophthalmic artery chemotherapy. So this was the youngest reported case which has received intra-arterial chemotherapy. The child was only 35 days old and they found both eyes were affected, and they have given selective ophthalmic artery chemotherapy, and they found that the lesion has responded to the treatment.